Welcome to Jesus Changes Everything, a daily podcast dedicated to providing a fresh look at the ancient and glorious truth that Jesus not only reigns, but is busy about the business of bringing all things under subjection, that celebrates the wonder and the glory that he has been given all authority in heaven and on earth. I'm sure we've all had this difficulty where we have close friends and somewhere along the way there is what I would call ideological shift. Someone changes their perspective. You may find it odd, I think it probably is odd, that when I was in high school, I had a very small cadre of friends that shared my zeal and my passion, or at least I believe they did, my zeal and my passion for both free market economics and Reformed theology. And we that was part of our identity, what this circle of friends was. Well, I went to go study at Grove City College, which was profoundly committed to free market economics and whose Bible teachers were all strong Reformed men. One of my friends went to Duke. One of my friends went to Harvard. And both of them came out no longer committed to free market economics or Reformed theology. Now, I mention all that not to talk about either one of those two friends, but rather to speak about another friend from Grove City College who, after our time together in college, while he wasn't necessarily as zealous as I was about those things, has taken a decided turn for the left and politically and is pretty hostile to the Christian faith. But if you remember, the whole purpose of this Forever Friends segment is not to say that I will stick with these people for the rest of my life and will always share this and always share that, but rather to give thanks for the times that we did share, to give thanks to God for his grace, for the friendship that I had when I had the friendship. Well, I'd like to introduce you to Niles Laughner. Niles Laughner. Now, Niles was an unusual cat, and still is. He had a background that in some ways reflected my own, in contradistinction to the other friends that we had. We had something in common that our others in our circle, not so much. And what that is sort of a cultural background grounded in, what's the way to describe it? Well, I'll describe it through clothes. Niles and I both dressed very preppy, not because it was the style at the time, though it was the style at the time, but because that's the way our people dress. This is why, to this day, I continue to dress this way, and I'm sure he does too. And we would talk about the great thing about this or that from Brooks Brothers, or the ties that you could find at Joseph A. Banks, and we shared that sensibility. We also shared, more important probably, well, certainly than that, is we shared a sense of humor. Niles could be really bitey and sarcastic, and unfortunately, as a sign of my weakness of character, I can be too, and I really enjoyed it. There was an element of snark, not against each other, quite the opposite, but sort of against the rest of the world. And in fact, I should mention that too, that one of the things that I remember about Niles is, for all that snark and all that prickliness that goes with it, he was a profoundly loyal friend. He was the kind of loyal friend who would actually say something to you when he thought you were out of line. And he did that in my life. And he did that in my life in a way that probably radically changed my life forever. And that's another reason for me to be grateful to him. But again, that's a sign of his character. He was a good young man who was a loyal friend. And again, not wanting to affirm the appropriateness of sarcastic humor, he was really funny too. And I enjoyed him. Now, a couple other strange things about Niles. Niles also had a very strange hobby. It was his hobby to go and explore abandoned buildings. And he would come back from these trips and he would tell us about the places that he'd been and the things that he'd seen. And occasionally he would take somebody along on one of these journeys. And we had one of the most memorable nights of my entire time in college was the time Niles took me and a group of my friends to explore the abandoned hospital in the town of Grove City. I'm not going to tell you that story now. I may tell you that story never, but I might tell it to you sometime. But again, it's one of those memories that I have with Niles. And Niles, one more thing, Niles would spend time with you. He was down for whatever the group was doing. He would be happy to go along. The last time I saw Niles was the first time I ever spoke at a homeschooling conference. It happened to be in his state, and I happened to go into the town where he lived and just had a really lovely visit with him. This was probably 15 years after we graduated. Well, again, I give thanks to God for Niles. Niles has radically different perspective on things than I do now. We were a lot closer ideologically then. We were a lot closer in terms of time and energy spent together then, but I remain grateful for him. I'm praying for God's blessing on him. And once again, let me ask you two things. One, I will try and track him down so he can get a chance to hear this. But if you know him or know how to track him down, please direct him toward this. And secondly, please, not only do I want you to do something similar with some of your old friends. Let them know that you're grateful for them, even if you haven't talked in a long time. And then I would love to hear how that went. Send us a message, send us an email, send us just however you want to do it. I'd love to hear how it went for you. We come now to question 78 in our ongoing look at the Westminster Shorter Catechism, and we come to the last of the questions on the Ninth Commandment. Last time we looked together at question 77, what is required in the Ninth Commandment. Today, again, if you've been paying attention, it should be no surprise that it says what is forbidden in the Ninth Commandment. The answer given is this: the Ninth Commandment forbids whatsoever is prejudicial to truth or injurious to our own or our neighbor's good name. The Ninth Commandment forbids whatsoever is prejudicial to truth or injurious to our own or our neighbor's good name. Now, I've mentioned, especially as we've been going through these particular questions on the Ninth Commandment, that the issue of truth-telling is a staple of the classes that I teach on ethics. That it's not at all uncommon for us to spend quite a bit of time asking the question, are there any circumstances in which it's okay to not tell a lie? And I should tell you that one of my very common approaches, not just in dealing with the lying question, but in these ethics classes, it is my habit to present my students with a particular scenario. and then say, so what do you do? When I'm teaching on, for instance, the difference between a consequentialist ethic or a deontological ethic, I put them in a kind of lifeboat scenario. If you got 8 people, you got food for 7, you know how long it's going to take to get where you need to get. If you divide it up by 8s, you'll all die. If you kill one of your group, then 7 of you will live. What do you do? Well, what they do so often, these students, and when they're confronted with these difficult situations, and because my goal is to help them think through their own standards, what it is and how they apply those standards, but what they try to do is wiggle out of the dilemma. They're always trying to find a way to answer the question that leaves the actual underlying question left unanswered. And that is especially common when it comes to questions of truth-telling. I'll tell them, if there's the Nazis are at the door, you're hiding the Jews. Are you hiding Jews? What do you say? Well, everyone wants to find a way. Maybe not everyone. Many of the students, I want to be not prejudicial to truth or injurious to my neighbor's good name. Many of the students respond with some kind of answer that will protect the people who are being hidden, but will be from a certain perspective technically true. A very common one might be something like, yeah, right. The implication being that by saying right, they're saying yes, there are. But by giving it with that sarcastic tone, they're communicating that there's no one hiding underneath the floor. Now, I mention all that because our forefathers here speak against, or express that the law commands, or forbids rather, whatever is prejudicial to truth. It is saying, among other things, it is saying with great clarity and inescapability that any time we deceive intentionally, we are in the crosshairs of the 9th commandment, even if said deception might be, in one sense, technically true. Now that brings us, by the way, to some of the answers to the exceptions that I'm actually quite comfortable with. That is, I believe that the 9th commandment commands that we give the truth to whom the truth is due. But I think there are people to whom the truth is not due. And let's take that intent to deceive. Some of you know that I am a longtime fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not far from me in my office, I have a Steelers helmet. I have a signed Steelers jersey for Joe Hayden, who has the biggest smile on the football field. Other rooms, I've got signed Steeler helmets from Hall of Famers. I've got all sorts of stuff. So I'm going to use a Steeler analogy. When Big Ben, our quarterback, has been our quarterback for more than a decade, when he takes a snap and turns and looks at his running back in the coming year, barring injury, that'll be Najee Harris, he will put the football in Najee Harris's belly and then pull the football out. And Najee Harris will bend his body over where the football was and run into the line as if he's carrying the ball. This is called a play-action pass. And the idea is to deceive the defense into thinking, oh, it's a run, because they will respond in a certain way, and then, lo and behold, Big Ben still has the ball, and he can pass it. It's deception. But in the context of a football game, you don't owe the truth to the opposing team. When the wide receiver fakes left and goes right, it's the same thing. By the way, the same thing is true in wartime. When the Allies built a fake military installation north of where they were planning to launch D-Day in order to make the Germans think that that assault on the French border was going to happen farther north. They weren't doing something wrong, but they were trying to communicate to the Nazis, hey, look up here, we're doing this up here, but they weren't. This is, by the way, how you would subsume both the Hebrew midwives and Rahab in the context of war. The Pharaoh who is demanding the murder of the unborn, or of the newly born children, are not owed the truth from the Hebrew midwives. The soldiers looking for the spies in Jericho are not owed the truth from Rahab, precisely because Rahab is being loyal to the people of God. So, deception that is technically true is still a violation, whereas deception for those who are not due the truth, not a violation at all. I hope that helps. We never seem to believe the Word of God. We're told there, those who hate me, that is God, those who hate me love death. And we pat God on the back for such a lovely metaphor. Next, we conclude that those green-haired kids with the needles in their faces in the big city, they certainly hate God, and so maybe they love death. Or we nod our head that yes, indeed, those who hate him will be unhappy in hell for a long time. God did indeed write poetically when he coined these words, but that doesn't mean he didn't mean it. Who, first, are those who hate him? We are by nature children of wrath. Those who hate him are not merely the flamboyant sinners, but all those as yet untouched by his redeeming grace. All those who fit in this category not only are due death, not only face death, not only will live in eternal death, unless reborn, but, as this text tells us, love death. They love it, embrace it, bathe in it, and dine on it. There's an important linguistic connection between culture and dirt, and, not coincidentally, worship. Culture, cultivate, cult. See? It all involves the same thing, the exercise of dominion. Culture, as Henry Van Til famously noted, is religion, or cultus, externalized. It is taking from the dirt and making gifts for our God, whether that God is our true maker or is someone made by us, and whether those gifts are the eggs we eat for breakfast or the bread and wine we consume at his table. The cruel truth, at least for those who hate him, is that even their labors in turn become his. They build houses that we live in and tend vineyards whose wine we drink. Which is why their hatred is so tightly linked to death. They cannot ultimately escape the claims of God on their labor by building Babel. If they build it, he will come and make it a footstool for his comfort. In the end, all they can do is destroy. In the end, they cannot replace real life with false life, but must replace it with death. Sartre was dead wrong when he suggested that the only real question left was death. What he meant was that death was the only real answer. But even suicide isn't enough. For when our bodies return to the dust, In the economy of God, they feed the life around them. So death requires not only that we shed our own lives, but that we destroy the very fecundity of the dirt, that we sterilize reality until it too dies. Consider, friends, the vision of science fiction writers. While there are exceptions, isn't it odd that the future worlds we are treated to often exhibit a sparseness that bespeaks sterility? Men and women dress like one another. Children are neither seen nor heard. But worse still, the ground is the consistency of a fine powder, a dust that gives no life. Once we're inside, everything is polished chrome. The future's so bright, I must have been spayed. In what is perhaps the greatest science fiction novel ever written, C.S. Lewis makes much the same point. That hideous strength, the final installment of his space trilogy, includes a fascinating conversation about the battle being waged on the moon. The gleeful Philostrato explains to the incredulous Mark, "Oh, see, intelligent life, under the surface, a great race further advanced than we. They have cleaned their world, broken free almost from the organic. They are almost free of nature, attached to her only by the thinnest, finest cord." Do you mean that all that, Mark pointed to the mottled globe of the moon, is their own doing? Why not? If you remove all the vegetation, presently you have no atmosphere, no water. But what was the purpose? Hygiene. Why should they have their world all crawling with organisms? And specially they would banish one organism. Her surface is not all you see. There are still surface dwellers, savages. One great dirty patch on the far side of her where there is still water and air and forests, yes, and germs and death. They are slowly spreading their hygiene over the whole globe, disinfecting her. This institute, Dio mio, it is for something better than housing and vaccinations and faster trains and curing people of cancer. It is for the conquest of death, or for the conquest of organic life, if you prefer. They are the same thing. Nature is the ladder we have climbed up by. Now, we kick her away. This love of death drives the world around us to the fruitless madness of sodomy. It causes them to devour their young through abortion. And even in the evangelical church, it leads us to poison the ground where our own children might have grown. It is why their entertainment traffics in wanton destruction, and why those children who do survive their tour of duty in the womb gun down their enemies, either on their Xbox or in their school hallway. It is why they mar and disfigure their own bodies, their ever-present reminder of the life they hate. It is why they embrace their soma of choice. To be countercultural doesn't mean wearing the death shroud so that we can fit in. Such merely hides our life under a bushel. Rather, let us be a bunch of dirty Christians, a people who are so connected with Him who is the life that our life shines before men. Let us be a people who have not only succumbed to fecundity, but embraced it in our homes, in our gardens, at our tables. Let us eat the fat of the land. Let the aroma of our feast drown out the smell of death that surrounds them. Let us cultivate a culture of dirt, a culture of life. This is how we fight our war, by digging our trenches, and there, in faith, planting the seed. We fight death with life, knowing with joy that death will indeed be swallowed up in victory. You've been listening to the Jesus Changes Everything podcast, a production of Dunamis Fellowship, the teaching outreach of Dr. R.C. Sproul Jr. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we encourage you to subscribe, which you can do at all the usual outlets, to tell your friends, and to spread the word. To learn more about the work of Dunamis Fellowship, please visit rcsproulJR.com. And join us next time on Jesus Changes Everything.